quiz on dragon types. I will be reading entries from Gen 1 all the way up to Gen 9. First up in the dragon type Pokedex entry is Dratini, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Pokemon Leaf Green. Long considered a mythical Pokemon until recently when a small colony was found living underwater. Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Omega Ruby, and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. Dratini continually molts and sloughs off its old skin. It does so because the life energy within its body steadily builds to reach uncontrollable levels. Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Black and White 2, Pokemon X, Brilliant Diamond, and Pokemon Shining Pearl. It is called the Mirage Pokemon because so few have seen it. Its shed skin has been found. Pokemon Moon. After a 10-hour struggle, a fisherman was able to pull one up and confirm its existence. Dragonair. Pokemon Yellow, Let's Go Pikachu, and Let's Go Eevee. According to a witness, its body was surrounded by a strange aura that gave it a mystical look. Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Omega Ruby, and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. Dragonair stores an enormous amount of energy inside its body. It is said to alter weather conditions in its vicinity by discharging energy from the crystals on its neck and tail. Pokemon Fire Red. It is said to live in seas and lakes. Even though it has no wings, it has been seen flying occasionally. Pokemon Ultra Sun. Lakes where Dragonair live are filled with offerings from people because they believe this Pokemon is able to control the weather. Pokemon Ultra Moon. Some say that if you see it at the start of the year, flying through the sky and twisting its body, you'll be healthy all year long. Dragonite, 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 Dragonite. Pokemon Red, Blue, and Pokemon Leaf Green. An extremely rarely seen marine Pokemon. Its intelligence is said to match that of humans. Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Omega Ruby, and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. Dragonite is capable of circling the globe in just 16 hours. It is a kind-hearted Pokemon that leads lost and foundering ships in a storm to the safety of land. Pokemon Sun. This Pokemon saved a shipwrecked man, taking him to a remote island, a paradise occupied solely by Dragonite. Pokemon Moon. Incur the wrath of this normally calm Pokemon at your peril, because it will smash everything to smithereens before it's satisfied. Pokemon Shield. This Pokemon is known as the Sea Incarnate. Figureheads that resemble Dragonite decorate the bows of many ships. Mega Ampharos. Pokemon Ultra Moon. Massive amounts of energy intensely stimulated Ampharos' cells, apparently awakening its long, sleeping dragon's blood. Altaria. Pokemon Ruby and Omega Ruby. Altaria this Pokemon catches updrafts with its buoyant wings and soars way up into the wild blue yonder. Pokemon Shield. This Pokemon has a kind disposition, but if it's provoked, it will threaten opponents with shrill cries before attacking them without mercy. Bagon. Pokemon Ruby and Pokemon Omega Ruby. Bagon has a dream of one day soaring in the sky. In doomed efforts to fly, this Pokemon hurls itself off cliffs. As a result of its dives, its head has grown tough and as hard as tempered steel. Pokemon Emerald. Although it is small, this Pokemon is very powerful because its body is a bundle of muscles. It launches headbutts with its iron-like skull. Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Violet. Its belief that it will be able to fly one day is apparently the influence of information carried in its genes. Pokemon Ultra Sun. Whenever it sees a bird Pokemon flying through the sky, it becomes envious and smashes its surroundings to bits with headbutts. Pokemon Ultra Moon. Some theories suggest that its behavior of forcefully bashing its head into things stimulates cells that affect its evolution. Shelgon. Pokemon Sapphire and Alpha Sapphire. Covering Shelgon's body are outgrowths much like bones. The shell is very hard and bounces off enemy attacks. When awaiting evolution, this Pokemon hides away in a cavern. Pokemon Emerald. It hardly eats while it waits evolution. It becomes hardier by enduring hunger. Its shell peels off the instant it begins to evolve. Pokemon Moon. They lurk deep within caves, motionless, neither eating nor drinking. Why they don't die is not known. Pokemon Ultra Moon. Shelgon lives deep within caves. It stays shut up in its hard shell, dreaming of the day it will be able to fly. Salamence. Pokemon Ruby and Omega Ruby. Salamence came about as a result of a strong, long-held dream of growing wings. It is said that this powerful desire triggered a sudden mutation in this Pokemon's cells, causing it to sprout its magnificent wings. Pokemon Sun. When angered, it loses all sense of itself and destroys everything around it. The destruction will continue until Salamence has tired itself out. Pokemon Moon and Pokemon Scarlet. It flies around on its wings, which have grown in at last. In its happiness, it gushes hot flames, burning up the fields it passes over. Pokemon Ultra Sun. Overjoyed at finally being able to fly, it flies all over the place and usually doesn't land until it's completely exhausted and needs to sleep. Pokemon Ultra Moon. Thanks to its fervent wishes, the cells in its body finally mutated, and at last it has its heart's desire. Wings. Mega Salamence. Pokemon Moon. Mega evolution fuels its brutality, and it may even turn on the trainer who raised it. It's been dubbed the Blood-Soaked Crescent. Pokemon Ultra Sun. The stress of its two proud wings becoming misshapen and stuck together because of strong energy makes it go on on a rampage. Rayquaza, 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 Rayquaza. And Mega Rayquaza. Pokemon Ruby. Rayquaza lived for hundreds of millions of years in the Earth's ozone layer, never descending to the ground. This Pokemon appears to feed on water and particles in the atmosphere. Pokemon Emerald, a Pokemon that flies endlessly in the ozone layer. It is said it would descend to the ground if Kyogre and Groudon were to fight. Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Pokemon Y. It flies in the ozone layer, way up high in the sky. Until recently, no one had ever seen it. Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. It flies forever through the ozone layer, consuming meteoroids for sustenance. The many meteoroids in its body provide the energy it needs to Mega Evolve. Axew. Pokemon Black, Pokemon X, and Pokemon Omega Ruby. They use their tusks to crush the berries they eat. Repeated regrowth makes their tusks strong and sharp. Pokemon White, Pokemon Y, and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. They mark their territory by leaving gashes in trees with their tusks. If a tusk breaks, a new one grows in quickly. Pokemon Sword. These Pokemon nest in the ground and use their tusks to crush hard berries. Crushing berries is also how they test each other's strength. Pokemon Scarlet. This Pokemon lives in nests that are made in the ground. People in ancient times used its tusks as cooking knives. Pokemon Violet. If you see peculiar teeth marks on boulders or trees, it means an Axew is likely living nearby. Fracture. Pokemon White, Pokemon X, and Pokemon Omega Ruby. Their tusks can shatter rocks. Territory battles between Fracture can be intensely violent. Pokemon Sword. After battle, this Pokemon carefully sharpens its tusks on river rocks. It needs to take care of its tusks. If one breaks, it will never grow back. Pokemon Shield. Its skin is as hard as a suit of armor. Fracture's favorite strategy is to tackle its opponents, stabbing them with its tusks at the same time. Pokemon Violet. Fracture uses its thick tusks to neatly cut prey into two portions, one to eat now and one to save for later. Haxorus. Pokemon Black, Pokemon X, and Pokemon Omega Ruby. They are kind but can be relentless when defending territory. They challenge foes with tusks that can cut steel. Pokemon Black and White too. Its tusks are incredibly destructive. They can easily slice through a thick, sturdy steel column every time. Pokemon Sword. Its resilient tusks are its pride and joy. It licks up dirt to take in the minerals it needs to keep its tusks in top condition. Pokemon Scarlet. This Pokemon nests in caves and abandoned mines. It is docile, but it will become incredibly angry if its tusks are touched. So beware. Trotigon. Pokemon Black, Pokemon Y, and Pokemon Sapphire. It warms its body by absorbing sunlight with its wings. temperature falls, it can no longer move. Pokemon Ultra Sun. The red skin on its face is harder than rock. In narrow caves, it squares off against its enemies and charges face first right into them. Pokemon Ultra Moon. It infiltrates tunnels that Pokemon like Diglett and Dugtrio have dug and quietly waits for prey to pass through. Pokemon Shield. Druddigon are vicious and cunning. They take up residence in nests dug out by other Pokemon, treating the stolen nests as their own lairs. Zekrom, 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 Zekrom. Pokemon White. This Pokemon appears in legends. In its tail, it has a giant generator that creates electricity. Pokemon Black and White 2, Pokemon X, and Pokemon Omega Ruby. This legendary Pokemon can scorch the world with lightning. It assists those who want to build an ideal world. Pokemon Shield. Mythology tells us that if people lose the righteousness in their hearts, their kingdoms will be razed by Zekrom's lightning. Dragalge. Pokemon Y and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. Tales are told of ships that wander into seas where Dragalge live, never to return. Pokemon Ultra Sun. This vicious Pokemon sprays a poisonous liquid on opponents that come near. For whatever reason, it gets along really well with Delmise. Pokemon Shield. Dragalge generates dragon energy by sticking the plume on its head out above the ocean's surface and bathing it in sunlight. Pokemon Violet. Since Venison is the better swimmer, Dragalge will approach it under the cover of seaweed, then immobilize it with a poisonous attack. Tyrant. Pokemon X and Pokemon Omega Ruby. This Pokemon was restored from a fossil. If something happens that it doesn't like, it throws a tantrum and runs wild. Pokemon Ultra Sun. Its large jaw has incredible destructive power. Some theories suggest that its restored form is different from its form of long ago. Pokemon Ultra Moon. Tyrant is spoiled and selfish. It may just be trying to frolic, but sometimes the ones it's trying to frolic with are gravely injured. Pokemon Shield. This Pokemon is selfish and likes to be pampered. It can also inflict grievous wounds on its trainer just by playing around. Tyrantrum. Pokemon X and Pokemon Omega Ruby. Thanks to its gargantuan jaws, which could shred thick metal plates as if they were paper, it was invincible in the ancient world it once inhabited. Pokemon Y and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. Nothing could stop this Pokemon 100 million years ago, so it behaved like a king. Pokemon Ultra Sun. Complete restoration is impossible, allowing room for theories that its entire body was once covered in a feather-like coat. Gumi. Pokemon Y and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. It's covered in a slimy membrane that makes any punches or kicks slide off it harmlessly. Pokemon Sun. The weakest strongest of all dragon-type Pokemon. It's unable to breathe if its skin dries out, so it sticks to shady places. Pokemon Moon. Its source of protection is its slimy, germ-laden mucus membrane. Anyone who touches it needs some thorough hand washing. Pokemon Shield. Their horns are powerful sensors. As soon as Gumi pick up any signs of enemies, they go into hiding. This is how they've survived. Pokemon Legends Arceus. Gumi hides away in the shade of trees where it's nice and humid. If the slime coating its body dries out, the Pokemon instantly becomes lethargic. Pokemon Violet. Gumi's horns are excellent sensory organs that cover all 5 of Gumi's senses. Gumi picks up on danger from the movement of the air. Sliggoo. Pokemon X and Omega Ruby. It drives away opponents by excreting a sticky liquid that can dissolve anything. Its eyes devolved, so it can't see anything. Pokemon Sun. It has trouble drawing a line between friends and food. It will calmly try to melt and eat, even those it gets along well with. Pokemon Ultra Sun. It crawls along sluggishly. The swirly protrusion on its back is filled with its brain and other organs. Pokemon Ultra Moon. Its entire body is covered with gooey mucus that can dissolve anything. Be sure to put gloves on if you're going to touch it. Pokemon Shield. The lump on its back contains its tiny brain. It thinks only of food and escaping its enemies. Gudra, 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 Gudra. Pokemon Sun. An amazingly friendly Pokemon, but if left to itself, loneliness overcomes it, and it oozes gooey tears. Pokemon Moon. It gets picked on because it's meek, but then whoever teased it gets to feel the full force of its horns and a good swatting from its thick tail. Pokemon Ultra Sun. It's very friendly toward people. If you grow close to it, Gudra will hug you with its sticky, slime-covered body. Don't get mad. Pokemon Ultra Moon. Underneath its slimy skin is a thick layer of fat, and the combination of the two makes enemies' attacks slide right off. Pokemon Shield. Its form of offense is forcefully stretching out its horns. The strikes land 100 times harder than any blow from a heavyweight boxer. Pokemon Scarlet. It loves the rain. This mellow Pokemon can be seen walking around on the plains and in the mountains on rainy days. Noibat. Pokemon Y and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. Even a robust wrestler will become dizzy and unable to stand when exposed to its 200,000 Hz ultrasonic waves. Pokemon Ultra Sun. Fruits are its favorite foods. This gourmet carefully picks out just the ripe ones using its sonar. Pokemon Shield. No wavelength of sound is beyond Noibat's ability to produce. ultrasonic waves it generates can overcome much larger Pokemon. Pokemon Scarlet. This Pokemon emits ultrasonic waves from its large ears to search for fruit to eat. It mistakes Applin for its food. Noivern. Pokemon X and Pokemon Omega Ruby. They fly around on moonless nights and attack careless prey. Nothing can beat them in a battle in the dark. Pokemon Ultra Sun. Although it has a violent disposition, if you give it a nice ripe fruit that it loves, Noivern will suddenly become tame. Pokemon Sword. Aggressive and cruel. This Pokemon will ruthlessly torment enemies that are helpless in the dark. Pokemon Violet. In the dark, even Hydreigon are terrified of this Pokemon. But in the light, Noivern is the one that avoids battle. Drampa. Pokemon Moon. This Pokemon is friendly to people and loves children most of all. It comes from deep in the mountains to play with children it likes in town. Pokemon Ultra Sun. If a child it has made friends with is bullied, Drampa will find the bully's house and burn it to the ground. Pokemon Ultra Moon. It appears in town and plays with children. Drampa will protect kids when they're in danger, so their moms don't have to worry. Jangmo-o. Pokemon Sun. It expresses its feelings by smacking its scales. Metallic sounds echo through the tall mountains where Jangmo-o lives. Pokemon Moon. They live in mountains where no trace of humans can be detected. Jangmo-o grow little by little as they battle one another. Pokemon Ultra Moon. It will never show an enemy its back in battle. Ancient warriors liked Jangmo-o for its valiant disposition and made it one of their own. Pokemon Shield. Jangmo-o strikes its scales to communicate with others of its kind. Its scales are actually fur that becomes as hard as metal. Hakamo-o. Pokemon Moon. It sheds and regrows its scales on a continuous basis. The scales become harder and sharper each time they're regrown. Pokemon Ultra Sun. It makes noise by clanging its scales together. When the rhythm has reached its peak, Hakamo-o attacks. Pokemon Ultra Moon. The scales it sheds can be molded and processed to make pots and pans. They conduct heat well, so they're a popular item. Pokemon Sword. The scaleless, scarred parts of its body are signs of its strength. It shows them off to defeated opponents. Como-o. Pokemon Sun. When it spots enemies, it threatens them by jingling the scales on its tail. Weak opponents will crack and flee in panic. Pokemon Ultra Moon. It battles valiantly with its fists, which are armored in steel scales. Como-o specializes in uppercuts. Pokemon Sword. It clatters its tail scales to unnerve opponents. This Pokemon will battle only those who stand steadfast in the face of this display. Pokemon Shield. Certain ruins have paintings of ancient warriors wearing armor made of Kama'o scales. Nagana Down. Pokemon Ultra Moon. One kind of Ultra Beast. It fires a glowing, venomous liquid from its needles. This liquid is also immensely adhesive. Dracosalt, 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 Dracosalt. Dracosalt. Pokemon Sword. In ancient times, it was unbeatable thanks to its powerful lower body. But it went extinct anyway after it depleted all its plant-based food sources. Dreepy. Dreepy. Pokemon Sword. After being reborn as a ghost Pokemon, Dreepy wanders the areas it used to inhabit back when it was alive in prehistoric seas. Pokemon Scarlet. In the evening, groups of Dreepy will fly at high speeds over the ocean and poke at Pokemon in the water for fun. Pokemon Violet. It has a habit of biting at Clauncher, even though it doesn't feed on them. This is said to be vestigial behavior from when Dreepy was alive. Dracloak, 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 Dracloak. Pokemon Sword. It's capable of flying faster than 120 miles per hour. It battles alongside Dreepy and dotes on them until they successfully evolve. Pokemon Shield. Without a Dreepy to place on its head and care for, it gets so uneasy it'll try to substitute any Pokemon it finds for the missing Dreepy. Pokemon Scarlet. This Pokemon flies around at over 120 miles per hour. If a Dracloak is defeated in battle, its Dreepy will wander off without a second thought. Dragapult. Dragapult. Pokemon Shield. Apparently the Dreepy inside Dragapult's horns eagerly look forward to being launched out at Mach speeds. Pokemon Scarlet. Dragapult can make its whole body transparent by clearing its mind and focusing. Even the Dreepy in Dragapult's horns becomes invisible. Eternatus. Pokemon Shield. It was inside a meteorite that fell 20,000 years ago. There seems to be a connection between this Pokemon and the Dynamax phenomenon. Eternamax. Pokemon Sword. As a result of Rose's meddling, Eternus absorbed all the energy in the Galar region. It's now in a state of power overload. Regidrago. Regidrago. Pokemon Sword. An academic theory proposes that Regidrago's arms were once the head of an ancient dragon Pokemon. The theory remains unproven. Pokemon Shield. Its body is composed of crystallized dragon energy. Regidrago is said to have the powers of every dragon Pokemon. Cyclizar, Cyclizar, Cyclizar. Cyclizar. Pokemon Violet. It can sprint at over 70 miles per hour while carrying a human. The rider's body heat warms Cyclizar's back and lifts the Pokemon's spirit. Regibax. Pokemon Scarlet. Regibax absorbs heat through its dorsal fin and converts the heat into ice energy. The higher the temperature, the more energy Regibax stores. Pokemon Violet. This Pokemon lives in forests and craggy areas, using the power its dorsal fin, it cools the inside of its nest like a refrigerator. Arctibax. Pokemon Scarlet. Arctibax freezes the air around it, protecting its face with an ice mask and turning its dorsal fin into a blade of ice. Pokemon Violet. It attacks with a blade of its frozen dorsal fin by doing a front flip in the air. Arctibax's strong back and legs allow it to pull off this technique. Excalibur. Pokemon Scarlet. This Pokemon blasts cryogenic air out from its mouth. This air can instantly freeze even liquid hot lava. Pokemon Violet. It launches itself into battle by flipping upside down and spewing frigid air from its mouth. It finishes opponents off with its dorsal blade. Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon. Pokemon Violet. According to an article in a dubious magazine, this Pokemon has some connection to a phenomenon that occurs in a certain region. Coridon. Pokemon Scarlet. This seems to be the Winged King, mentioned in an old expedition journal. It was said to have split the land with its bare fists. Coridon Limited Build. Pokemon Scarlet. The ecology and other data about this Pokemon are unknown. It was named Coridon by the professor who discovered it. Miraidon. Pokemon Violet. This seems to be the Iron Serpent, mentioned in an old book. The Iron Serpent is said to have turned the land to ash with its lightning. Miraidon Low Power Mode. Pokemon Violet. It was given the name Miraidon by the professor who discovered it. Its ecology and other details are unknown. Walking Wake. Walking Wake. Pokemon Violet. It resembles an illustration published in a paranormal magazine said to be a depiction of a super ancient Suicune. Diplin. Pokemon Violet. The head sticking out belongs to the foreworm, while the tail belongs to the coreworm. The two share one apple and help each other out. Archaludon. Pokemon Scarlet. It gathers static electricity from its surroundings. The beams it launches when down on all forms are tremendously powerful. Hydrapple. Pokemon Scarlet. 7 serpents live inside an apple made of syrup. The serpent in the center is the commander. Pokemon Violet. These capricious serpents have banded together on the rare occasion that their moods align. Their true power is unleashed. Gouging Fire. Gouging Fire. Pokemon Violet. It resembles an eerie Pokemon once shown in a paranormal magazine. That Pokemon was said to be an Entei, regenerated from a fossil. Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt. Pokemon Violet. It bears a resemblance to a Pokemon that became a hot topic for a short while. is Raiku's ancestor. This concludes our Dragon Pokemon entry readings. But before you go, I have a question. Which dragon type would you choose for good luck in 2024? My two choices would be Rayquaza and or Bagon. Rayquaza because he's one of my favorite dragon type, and he just looks like he would bring me good fortune if I had him. And Bagon because if he can make his dreams of flying come true,